It could be about anything.
What'd you say, Elaine?
It could be about anything after April, right? The whole history of the
Yeah,
world.
yeah. But there's a reason. There's a reason. Very funny. Just gonna say hello to everybody. I'm saying hello to Bayit. I don't know who Bayit is, but I'm saying hello to you because you're off screen and your name is Bayit, but that's okay. Hi, Lance, Judy, wonderful, Helen, Vivian, and Elaine. Welcome. And of course, Ronika and Liron.
Yeah.
Oh, wearing such a beautiful spreadsheet. I like it. Anyway, this book, After Abel, somebody introduced me to it. It's written by a woman, Michal Lemberger, and it is stories about women from our tradition where we don't know much about them. And she imagines, how beautiful. She imagines, sorry, she imagines a greater story. For example, Hava, After Abel is about Eve. Hava, what did she experience? What was it like for her? I mean, we don't really know what she was thinking, having two children, one killed the other one. We don't really know. Now, the reason I loved it, my husband actually had a really good time. We read stories to each other. We would take turns and we read it because we found it fascinating. And I actually bought this secondhand because I liked it so much. But here's the thing, and I might not get to it today. There was a story about Vashti.
Mm.
And it's just amazing. And as we look in the Megillah, remember what I told you last time. Did Vashti die? Was she killed? Elaine is the one who said, I don't think that she's killed anywhere. We're going to check up on that. And according to this book, she's Zeresh's sister. And they're both princesses. And it's really cool. Now, I'm not saying that's corroborated by history, but it's a really, hi, Elmer, thank you. Okay. But it's really interesting to imagine where Vashti might have gone. And this is a midrash as well. These are midrashim. There's one about Hagar, because we don't know very much about her, where she came from, we don't know. We only see it from everybody else's point of view, except for the scene with her son, the scenes with her son. So I kind of recommend it. I just think it's a cool book, After Abel. The imagery from it stays in my head, but I found it, it not only, wait, is it about Vashti or Zeresh? It might be about Zeresh, but Vashti, yeah, it's about Zeresh, his wife. That's the name of the story. But we don't know very much about Zeresh. So she makes a whole story, and Vashti turns out to be I think it's her sister. And she's banished, and we never hear from her because Vashti's not allowed to show her face. So just suggesting it, and maybe, oh, thank you. I think we're okay. Are we okay? I think we're okay today, even though it's okay. Put a little bit. Thank you. Thank you so much. Just in case I dressed warmly today, just in case. It is very cold outside. All right, my friends. Hi, Milton. No, not this. I read a very interesting article after last week. Ted, who's not here this week, they couldn't make it, Ted and Phyllis, when he spoke about it being a comedy. I read a really interesting article. It might be an article that Lance sent me about why Megillat Esther is a comedy. Hi, Alice. Alice looks like she's not in New York. Just a guess. That Megillat Esther is kind of a farcical, is that how you pronounce it? Farcical comedy? It's a farce? Thank you so much. That's fine. That's fine.
Rabbi Bracha, satire?
I don't know, a farce or a satire. I don't know if it's a satire.
Farce is like crazy.
Made up.
No, but the action is like
maybe
absurd.
satirical.
Satirical is an attack.
Satirical. Well, the idea being that every single character is overblown, like all good or all bad or all stupid, or at least the way all silly or all foolish, or at least the way it's portrayed at first glance. And then there's a lot of reversals inside the story. There's many, there are many opposites that happen, and it feels like that. Now, I'm not saying that's the Orthodox necessarily viewpoint, that it's satirical, but it's an interesting way to look at it that way, that it's like a comedy, like the way comedies might be written, like things don't happen really, that they switch 180 degrees so often. Keeping that in mind, even though that's not the major lens that we're looking at. Apologies for eating an apple. Okay. Anybody have any comments from last time, thoughts that came up for you that you'd like to share? Short comment before we begin. Liron is kicking her feet. Elaine, did you want to share?
No, I'm trying to remember what we did last week.
I know, right? So long ago. We got up to the 15th verse. Thankfully, I mark it because otherwise I wouldn't remember. I actually have to get a pencil. I apologize. I'm going to go get a pencil. Wait, maybe I brought a pencil. I brought a pencil. We are starting with chapter 1, verse 16 today. Hetzayin. So any thoughts? No? Okay. Do people in their text, do you have two ways of writing the second word in the Hebrew? It's called the kri v'chtiv. Kri v'chtiv. That it is read one way, but it's written a different way. Familiar? Do you have that in there?
Yeah.
Okay, so somebody who reads Hebrew, what do you see that's different? What's the,
Mm.
anybody want to mention what it is?
Mm.
Yeah, so Ronit says the placement of the vav, the name of the person who appears in the second word is Mimuchan. Mimuchan. Let's roll back to last week. As Elaine said, let's remember what we actually talked about last week. So if you remember, Vashti did not obey, you could say, the king's command. We said there were midrashim. Why else wouldn't she agree? Of course, she wants to appear in front of everybody in her beauty and show herself off because she's the queen. She's the only woman that Achashverosh is inviting. But she didn't agree, and that's where the midrashim came up about maybe she grew a tail. That makes a lot of sense. Or she had tzaraat, which was some physical disfiguration, or maybe she didn't want to appear naked. So all of those possibilities. The not wanting to appear naked, which has to do with that he asked her to come with her royal crown, and those feel like extraneous words because of course the queen would come with her crown, and that's where the midrash comes that says, well, only with her crown. Everybody remember that?
Mm.
Okay. So once she doesn't agree, now the question is, what should the king do with her? And it feels like there were different midrashim here. He's very angry. Does anybody remember the midrash about why he got so angry? That there were two forms of anger in the pasuk. Remember that? This is in verse 12. The king got very angry, and his anger burned within him. Remember, there were two different, remember that? Everybody with me? Anybody? Just trying to remind us all what we did. So we said one was outwardly angry. Of course, he should be angry. Means he was angry on the inside. Does anybody remember why he couldn't express the extra level of anger? Anybody remember that? Got to wake you guys up somehow.
Mm.
So we said, again, because it seems extraneous, like why, we're so used to hearing these words, they don't feel extraneous, but they are. Why do you have to say in two different directions that he's angry? I mean, you could, it makes it more poetic, it makes it stronger. But the Midrash says, no. One was that ketzef, he's like foaming, that's what the word comes from. As if he's foaming, he's so angry, steam coming out of his ears. But inside he had an anger that he couldn't express. So that's where the Midrash adds, well, maybe Vashti not only said, I won't come, but she also sent a note making him feel like a little person, like saying, oh, in your drunken stupor, even the stable boys of my father or grandfather would never ask, their wives to come naked and parade in front of other people just to show off. And he was very angry about that. And that was Hamato Ba'arabo. People remembering this? Is this jigging some sort of memory? Okay, good. And that would be on the inside. So he was very hurt and insulted. And of course, when somebody is made to feel really bad, especially by a person, let's say, close to them, and a person that he wants to make sure that she holds him in high esteem, and he is the king, then how do people react? How does one react when somebody belittles, derides you? What would be your reaction? It's not a trick question. Yes, Lance.
My question is,
Wait, I asked the question first.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. No, I have a question about your question. Now, I'm
You
questioning
about
the
my
text.
question?
I'm questioning about the text. We're given an emotional description.
Where? Oh, in the verse 12.
Yes, he was
Right.
angry. He's angry outside, burned inside, right?
Right.
Now, I'm not familiar with too many places in Tanakh where we get this kind of description. Are you?
Mhm. Can you hear any? Okay. Yeah.
I mean,
Right.
it doesn't seem like it would be in a normal Hebrew text. Normal Hebrew
It's
text,
more,
everything
right.
is
And this is,
outward.
right. This is more of a story and it's very descriptive. So that's where the Midrash comes up with this idea that there was more than just angry that she didn't agree. There was an extra level of anger, but he had to keep that inside. But that made him even more angry. You know, when you can't express it, that can be even harder. But what's your question, Lance?
Oh, my question, my point would be, I guess, Rabbi Shlomo Riskin says that the Greeks have this kind of detail, whereas Genesis, for example, lacks it completely. And if you think back to the book of Daniel, I don't remember, I mean, I really don't know these texts as well as you do, but I really don't remember this kind of description, particularly of an inside emotion.
So
You know,
I'm just thinking about what you're saying, and that's really interesting. I mean, we believe that Mordechai and Esther wrote it. Why do we think, thank you for that question, Lance. Why was it so important for Mordechai and Esther to go in? That's really interesting, to go into such detail, not just of, let's say, the scenes, but also of the emotions within. That's a really, really good point. Even like that the king tossed and turned at night. When do we hear things like that? So any thoughts about that? Because I think we could notice emotions. That's a really good way. We've been noticing different things along the way. I like this idea of also noticing emotions. I'm going to make a note of that. So anybody have a thought about, I don't have an answer for this. Like I didn't look this up. This is more our thoughts. Why would Mordechai and Esther find it so important to make it not just visually descriptive, beautifully, I think, because it's such a story, but also emotionally descriptive in a way that Lance is pointing out that we don't usually see in biblical canon. I like that. That's really good.
Well, it provides more insight into the people involved.
Mm,
Since
okay.
Achashverosh, the fact that it says the king grew furious and his wrath seethed within him,
Mm-hmm.
also level of anger, and maybe also shows that he's a hothead.
Mm, okay. And why would that be important to tell us? Like, I'm really just opening up the conversation. I'm not.
So then later on in the book, when when he knows about Haman's plot and
Yeah.
Mordecai and Esther go to him, reverse it, he's like, no, can't do that. So it's like, maybe we had talked before about anti-Semitism in the book.
Yep.
So maybe that shows the more of his his hidden anti-Semitism, just thinking out loud.
Oh, that there are hidden things. Oh, very nice. Ooh, very nice. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Let me just say something that I'm thinking based on what you're saying. Remember, we said that Megillat Esther is all about the hiddenness of God. It's all about things going on behind the scenes. That's really interesting. Thank you, Lance and Helen, for, at least for me, putting these together. This is another hidden thing that we don't usually get to see. And actually, Megillat Esther is allowing us to see things that are often hidden when we read text. This is awesome. Fantastic.
Mm.
Times I told you that the group that it's so much richer when you participate because you add so many more layers. I can do all my thinking and all my research, but it's the participation that really makes it. I just really have to. This is just amazing. Emotions are usually hidden.
mm,
Love this. It's beautiful. Okay, beautiful. So I think, I don't know if this is an answer, but we got two answers from Helen, I think. One answer was it gives us more insight into the person. So it creates a more three-dimensional, even though actually they're one-dimensional in being good or bad, but even that particular trait that they're showing, because we know more about what's going on the inside, it creates a more developed, I guess, character because we see more than just what's on the outside. Although interestingly, we're balancing that with them being one-dimensional. But still, the idea of actually ascribing emotions. And the other is this idea, I don't know if you said this, Helen, or if I heard it in your words, this idea that Megillat Esther, which is all about the hiddenness, is actually showing us things that are often hidden. And that's just something for us to take away from life. Just one second, whoever was speaking, just a minute, Bert.
Me. Bert.
Yeah, just a minute, Bert. The idea, oh, were you Bait and now you're Bert? Awesome.
Yeah, that was a mistake.
No, it's fine. I don't care. Now I know Bait equals Bert. That's fine. So the idea that another level or layer of the hiddenness of Megillat Esther is showing us things that are usually hidden. I'm just loving this extra layers. Yes, Bert, what else would you want to add?
Well, I didn't know that I want to add. It's by more of a question. So it was written by Mordechai and Esther.
So we
How
say,
did they know that? Hamaso Bara Bo. If Kadosh Baruch Hu was doing it, writing so like it does in the Chumash, we could say Hashem knew that. But how did these people know that?
I have a couple of answers to that. Any thoughts? Anybody else?
I don't have any thoughts about it. I just came up with the
No.
thought question.
I mean, your question is, do you have a thought about it? Roni, we'll keep you off camera. Yeah,
I think
just speak up so everybody can hear you.
I think that part of that might be them adding in those layers. Like, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're, people, even when they're feeling things on the inside, like there's a lot that's going on that is visible on the outside. And so there's a layer of inference there, but also that by putting that into the text, they're saying like emotions really matter here.
So I don't know.
Can you repeat that? Because I didn't hear it.
Yeah, of course. Ronita's dealing with the baby. That's why we're not turning the camera right now. So Ronita's saying that that it's possible they didn't really know, but by adding emotions, there's an inference. It's reminding us that there are many things that lie beneath the surface. So maybe they're imagining it, or maybe somebody, remember we said the Jews were there. Maybe somebody saw the note that was passed. I mean, in real life, somebody could have seen the note, or the guard that passed it told someone. Remember that Mordechai?
Yeah, but no, in other words, that's the outward anger. He passed the note. How do we know
No,
about the inner anger?
Hafuch. Opposite, Bert. The note that she sent to him was not passed around, was not the Vayiksof. It was the Chamato Ba'arabo. The reason he was angry on the inside was that she insulted him in this note and belittled him, but he couldn't say it out loud because he's not going to say the insult. That's the thing. So I have a few other ideas, but it could be somebody was there and somehow put two and two together, or he spoke about it later. Like, we don't know the reason. And I guess one answer, which this group may not like, is that it's in the biblical canon. And the reason that is we believe, at least on some level, it's biblically inspired, and it's biblically inspired, and we have a mitzvah commandment to read it. We even have a blessing on it. So we feel there is some connection with God again behind the scenes. So one answer that I could imagine we would read is that they thought Chamato Ba'arabo just because they were being more descriptive, but it was actually godly inspired because it was hinting at something beneath the surface. So, Bert, I can never give you a full answer on Midrashim, because remember, Midrashim are imagined mostly. Sometimes they're not, but most of the time they're imagined, and they come to fill in spaces in the text. So they're trying to paint a picture of Vashti, No, the whole thing is a power play. I'm better than you are. No, I'm better than you are. I'm more important. I'm more important. And you're going to see the next midrashim about Haman is also going to be about how he feels with his own wife, with Zeresh. It's a midrash way of reading the text. Okay, but wait. What was the question that about why we have emotions? Yeah, Lance, question, because I want to move on to the text.
Yeah, two things. I searched the Megillah for other emotions.
Yeah.
I can't find any. In other words, as far as I can tell, this is the only place in the Megillah where we have these
How did
emotions.
you search it already? That was fast.
I have a Safari's copy of the Megillah, and I just did.
Well, why don't we keep our eyes open and ears open for it as we go along? How's that?
Okay, but I have one other point, and that is
Yeah.
God is presented with emotions.
Here?
Jealousy, no,
Yeah. That's true.
right?
Yep.
And it seems really interesting that there's no anthropomorphic theophany in this text.
Well, there's no God
God.
in this text.
Now, Lance,
Exactly. Yes, Bert.
what does it say? Doesn't it say in the what does it say in the Megillah? You know, about when whatchamacallit was when Mordechai refused to bow down to Haman. What does it say? He got angry.
Yeah. Yeah, there's more. We're going to look out for more emotions.
It says Haman got angry.
Didn't he?
Why don't we wait,
Oh.
guys? We don't have to jump the gun. We're going to learn the whole mitzvah. So let's just keep an eye out for it. By the way, there are some emotions in the Torah. I mean, Moshe got really angry and he smashed the luchot. Lishaber is to smash as opposed to lishbor, which is to break. Now, there's a difference between smashing.
God gets angry all the time.
Well, that's what Lance said. He said, actually, in the Torah, God is jealous, God is angry. But we were talking about maybe human emotions. Okay.
No.
Vivian, do you have something to add?
Yeah, I haven't mentioned. I think they had to tell this story because they needed to find a way to get Esther into the story. So they had to tell the story about Vashti and how she lost her power and she no longer became the queen and all that whole story in order to lead into the fact that Esther then became the queen.
Right.
So they needed that story.
100%. The question was about the emotions, but what you're saying about needing the story is about God's hand making it happen. Why did Vashti not agree? Why? And you'll see more things. So that's where we see. Suppose
While the king got so angry and got rid of her, that was part of the emotion that he was so angry at Vashti.
Right. Vanti. That's what you're saying. You're saying this is another link on the road to having Esther come to power. If if Vashti hadn't written the note, if we assume she did, and Achashverosh didn't get so angry that he was willing to listen to even some random advisor's partly ridiculous suggestion, then Esther wouldn't have come to power. Great, excellent. I love that. Okay, so this was a necessary step along the way, and that's why they wrote it. And they may have written it as he got very, very, very angry, and it's just, a descriptive way. But we know that Midrash specifically tries to pick up on things that feel extreme. Yeah, Felice.
I was going to just say, do you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, good.
I would have
told
you if we couldn't hear you.
Thank you. Okay, I was going to just say that I think that maybe the idea of Achashverosh, it's specifically written that Achashverosh was under the influence, like he was drinking.
Yes,
so that
it was.
so I'm saying, so it's showing us that when you're doing something that's not natural, you're going against nature. So
what are you saying? To drink goes against nature?
No. To be rational, that could affect the way his whole thinking was. So in other words, we're seeing somebody who may have acted differently had he not been intoxicated.
Oh, for sure. 100%.
Yeah.
That's why we said last time that his Kitov Lev HaMelech B'Yayin, right? When his heart felt merry with wine, but we know that merriness can flip in a moment.
Exactly.
Okay, so Pasuk Tetzayin, so where we started about 20 minutes ago, was that Mimuchan is written with the vav in the out of place. Now,
Yes.
whenever, but we pronounce it, we don't pronounce it. In other words, if we didn't have nikud, by the way, the word is not nikudos or nikudot. The modern
Nikud.
Israeli word for vowels is nikud. So that's one of the things I like to correct people just so that you'll be contemporary. So if you didn't have vowels here, it would say mumchan, right? Look at the way it's written. We
Oh,
don't, if
right.
we have nikud, you'd have to read it as mumchan. But because we have kri uchtiv, cutie, because we have kri uchtiv, that you read it one way, but it's written one way, but you read it a different way, but it's not the only place. There are many places all over. The Megillah has a lot. I think Kohelet had, I don't remember. Ruth has a lot of them. We read it mimuchan, but then of course immediately Chazal, the Gemara, said why? Why write it differently? So I'm going to read to you what the Gemara says. It's not me, it's the Gemara, just saying. Why was his name written with the vav? Oh, sorry. The Megillah, our Chachamim said that mimuchan is actually Haman. Haman. And the way they learned this is because his name is written in this weird way. Why was it written with the vav between the two mems and not the vav mim muchan the way it should have been? If you don't know Hebrew, I'm sorry, but just believe me. The Gemara says that mim muchan was Haman, who was muchan, destined or ready for trouble, meaning he was going to be hung at the end. And this is the first shadowing that would happen. The Midrash adds to that. Oh, no, that's complicated. No, I decided not to share that. Sorry. The other thing is that when Memuchan is spelt with the Vav between the Mems, there are two words. How would you read it? If you divide it into two words, Ronnie, what would you do?
In which way?
With the Vav in the second letter.
Hmm.
Mum and Ken. Mum and Chen. Now, mum is a blemish, or in this case, being hung, meaning that he wouldn't recover. That would be, or that the Jews would suffer from him. That's another way of understanding it. And then Chen, anybody know the gematria, the numerology of Chen? 70. So there's a
70.
teaching that he was only in actual power for 70 days. So that's something, I don't know how to figure that out exactly, because remember, he cast his lot in Nisan, Pesach time, and he only did it for Adar, which is 11 months later. So I don't know how they came up to 70 days. But that's just one of the Midrashic teachings. But this one I like a little bit better. What is the gematria of Vav? Vav is the one that's out of place.
Vav is
6. Okay. Now, 1 second. How many advisors were there? Let's go back up to Yudalid, to 14. There's Karshana, Sheitar, Admata, Tarshish, Meres, Marsena, and Mimuchan. 7.
7.
But and they do it according to the order of the importance. The one who's closest to the king is Karshana, then Sheitar, then Admata, Tarshish, Meres, Marsena, Mimuchan. And oh, I didn't bring my graphic novel. That's why I don't have the ta'amim here, so I can't lane it for you. So Mimuchan, if you move the Vav ahead, it means that the lowliest of the lowest advisors jumped over 6 people to get to the head of the line. Because since when does the lowliest advisor speak first? Usually it should have been Karshana. What do you say? Sheitar. What do you say? Admata. What do you say?
Right.
I think I like that. Like that just makes sense to me. That Haman was impetuous and he really tried to grab power, which he was able to do. But it's a nice way to explain the Vav. I liked it. So the mum is one way that there was a blemish, whether he was a blemish on the Jewish people or whether he himself was going to be blemished because he'd be hung. He was destined to be hung. But the Vav that he jumped forward, because that's what happened to the Vav. They jumped it forward between the Mem and the Mem. Okay. So what did he say, Memuchan? Just a minute. Oh, and by the way, the Gemara really makes fun of him and says, Hediot kofetz larosh. So hediot can be simple, like the Kohen hediot.
Common.
It could mean an idiot or a foolish person.
Or
So
the commoner maybe.
Hediot could be commoner, could be. Yeah, Hediot, but it generally means is the the simple or the commoner. Yes, so it could be also the more common, but he jumps over everybody else. And actually, according to the Gra, the Vilna Gaon, remember we're using the Vilna Gaon a lot as well, which I really like because I don't get to hear his voice that often. But the Parshanut that I've been following uses the Gra a lot, which I like. He says that actually Haman gave really bad advice to the king. And we don't know why the king agreed. Sorry, I'm talking to Liron. Yeah, you like that, right? Why did the king agree? The king should not have agreed to this poor advice. So we're going to learn. So we're already saying, so Haman, according to this, it doesn't make so much sense, his actual advice doesn't make so much sense. And we're going to see that this is again one of the Hester Panim that God was working in the background to make Achashverosh get very angry when he was drunk to agree to this. And here is the way the Midrash imagines it. Okay, the Midrash imagines that Haman, oh wait, let's read the pasuk. So he, Haman / Memuchan, said before the king and the Sarim, yeah. Sorry, did somebody say something? No. So otherwise, why, by the way, this is another contextual proof, textual proof. He said it lifnei, you could say before the king, or you could say in front of the king. So lifnei hamelech basarim means he said it in front of the king and the ministers. But you could also understand that lifnei means before, means he jumped before. Yeah. He jumped over the other sarim. Otherwise, also, why does it say sarim? Obviously, he's saying it in front of the sarim, the ministers. I mean, we just said he asked all 7 ministers. So again, the Midrash is picking up. So this is planting the seed of who Haman was, what kind of person he was, who wanted to grab power, who was impetuous. So, lo halamelech levado avta Vashti malka. Not only against the king did Vashti, the queen, do wrong. Ki al kol hasarim, actually all the ministers, val kol amim, and all the nations, asher b'chol medinot hamelech Achashverosh, which are in the whole, all the lands of Achashverosh. Why? And here he's imagining what might happen. Yetzei devar hamalka. These words of the queen that she didn't agree to the king. Al kol anashim, for all the women, lahavzot balehen beinehen, to despise or to think lowly of their husbands. Be'omram hamelech Achashverosh, because when it'll be reported that the king Achashverosh said, Laviat Vashti Malka, to bring, remember, there's a difference between Queen Vashti and Vashti the queen. So again, he's reducing Vashti to be Vashti the queen and not Queen Vashti. Velo va'a, and she didn't come. So I just want to ask you, can we take a step back and say, is this true? So used to it that it's hard to separate ourselves from the way we've learned the Megillah all these years. Can we take a moment and say, does this sound logical? Like, what's I just want to ask, do people think that this makes actually sense?
Wow.
Yeah.
Continuing to 18. And on that day, the princesses, Sarot, the princesses, the queens or ministers, but in female form, of all of Persia and Media? How do you pronounce it? Media? I don't know. Asher shamu dvar malka, who listened to the queen, l'chol sarei hamelech, kidai bizayon v'katzef, then it'll create a lot of derision, contempt. Katzef, in this case, is anger or quarreling, that he's imagining that just because they heard the queen do that, therefore every man would not be able to. Okay, so just until here. What do we think of this? Does this make, maybe it does. Maybe it does make sense to you. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I would say that if you want to believe it, it's very easy to believe it. And I think that in those days, the men were so powerful over the women that, and they had all the power, even the thought of any part of that power would be taken away. They would be so scared, so worried. So I think it really hit them right in the point that really would.
So it was like a weak point. He knew where to put in. Okay, very good. Good. Any thoughts?
I think it's interesting going with the satire reading of the Megillah, like yes, like the men are, they think they're so powerful, but it's kind of like undermining that, like they're
Uh-huh.
actually, very self-conscious. They
Right.
can't take even a little bit of hit.
Yeah, exactly. So he knew how to find the Achilles heel. But according to the Midrash, it's really interesting that Haman comes from a lowly family, but he had discovered some of the treasure that Nebuchadnezzar, we said Nebuchadnezzar had hidden in all these storehouses near the Euphrates River. So he had enough money to marry a wealthy socialite. That's like in this book, Zeresh, from a royal family, but she didn't respect him. And she mocked him and said, you come from a poor family, a peasant family. Why should I respect you? That's like newly written, nouveau riche and old, how does that, old money and new money?
Mhm.
Actually, this was an opportunity for him to gain control in his own house and to rule over his own wife. Interesting that he was coming. And I think this is a way that people often speak. Like we all talk from our own experiences and where we feel the weakness or we feel a trigger point. So, and that is actually 17, that he is feeling that he's not respected in his own home. Anyway, it's a way of reading it. The Gra says in verse 18, instead of Sarei, the male form of ministers, there'll be a women's lib rebellion, and they will be called female.
Sarot.
Sarot, right, exactly.
Yes.
Sarot. Since when are they called Sarot? That's a new thing. Like it's a little bit like the fake news kind of thing, meaning, but that's not exactly what I mean. What I mean is that there's so many ways where one can, what's the word? When you sensationalize, that's the word I'm looking for. When you sensationalize something. So he's using words that sensationalize it, like saying, can you imagine that they're going to be called the ministers, the women? Like he's taking it to the nth degree. That first Vashti, then everybody's going to do it. Then the women are going to rise up. Sorry, did somebody say something? Alicia's with you.
Yeah, this is Yonina.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
She was watching Peppa Pig, but I don't know what happened.
Oh, she wants to hear about Queen Esther. We love seeing you, Yonina. What does she call you, Elaine?
Safta.
Safta. You're sitting on your Safta's lap and you're learning Torah with her. That's awesome. We got a few little ones here learning Torah. Amazing. Okay. 19. Yes. So I really love that the Gra pointed out Sarot Parasumadai. By saying that, he prayed, as Ronit said, on their fears that the women will rise up. So, as a female rabbi, I don't want to go into that, but we know that over time, I'm not trying to say anything specifically about male rabbis, but we know that over time, women have been able to move into sectors, into areas that traditionally they weren't in, whether it's lawyers or judges or physicians and many other areas. And I think it's legitimate to say that, I guess, that men felt either threatened or they just never occurred to them. So when somebody lifts up and says Sarot Parasumadai, he really did a good job. He has really good emotional leverage here. That's what I'm seeing, emotional leverage. Okay. So now anybody have something to say, or we'll go to verse 19? I was hoping we'd finish Perek Aleph today. That would be cool. Let's try. So now he's giving his suggestion. Let me just look one second. Okay. If the king agrees to this. So just hold on one second. There's already a thing here. Just one second. Okay. Okay. Let's roll it back. Remember what happened when the king had a problem with Vashti? He could have just said, off with her head, or you're banished, or you're whatever. But he didn't. What did he do? What did he do? He turned to first the Jewish team, the Jewish advisors, and then go on, Felice.
He was looking for some kind of either support or suggestion what to do.
So it's right. So according to the read that I'm about to tell you, that was the way things were done. That the king would need to get his cabinet or his ministers to agree, and together they'd come up with the plan. So Haman is subtly changing that here, again, according to this read, Imal HaMelech Tov. So one way of understanding is if it pleases the king. But another way is you can decide if you think this is a good idea, you don't need our buy-in, which actually in the end worked against him, but I haven't gotten to that yet. But this is what, and there are more pieces that I'm going to explain. Imal HaMelech Tov, if it's good for the king, Yetzei Devar Malchut Milefanav, that a royal edict will come from him, not from the whole cabinet, just from him. Okay, meaning just you and me, king. Like I'm giving you a suggestion. If you like it, go with it. I'm giving you permission to subtly change things. V'yikatev, it'll be written b'datei parasumadai, in the laws of parasumadai, v'lo ya'avor, and it can never be revoked, which also is interesting. Asher lo tavo Vashti lifnei melech Achashverosh u'malchutai yiten hamelech lirota tova mimena, that Vashti cannot come anymore before King Achashverosh. Now, does that mean that she's killed?
No.
Right. I just want to say, like, we all think she was killed. It doesn't say that.
That's true.
Right. She's not allowed to come before the king. Umalchuta, her royalness, her royal position. Yiten hamelech, the king will give lireuta, her companion or position, or another one, atova mimena, who is better than she. What does better mean? Subservient, meek, doing whatever the king asks. Okay. I'm just going to continue for a minute. When the king's decree, which he will make, that's the whole thing, is that only he, in his whole kingdom, ki rabahi. Now, you could understand ki rabahi, how big it is, meaning how big the kingdom is, but it's not clear. What is ki rabah? By the way, Bernie does something really beautiful and really sweet. Whenever he reads ki rabahi, Rabba Sarah, he has Rabba Sarah get up on a chair and bow, kind of curtsy to everybody. Rabahi, she's a Rabba, Rabba Sarah, which I love. V'chol hanashim, and then what will happen is all the women, they will show respect to their husbands, great and small alike, speaking about himself, small, that he felt small. Okay, so hold on one second. Now, was it in Achashverosh's interest to get rid of Vashti? Yes, Judy. You have to unmute Judy. Judy.
Do we know that he got rid of her? This whole piece here reminds me of, like in Shemot, where Paro says to Moshe, if you do this, then you will not see my face again. And that's not talking about killing. That's just talking about not seeing him.
Correct. 100%. No, that I agree with you. But I had another question. My question is it to Achashverosh's advantage to get rid of Vashti, whatever that means, to banish her from the palace, to banish her from her position, to remove her from her position? Is that in Achashverosh's, what was the word I used before?
Best interest.
Best interest. Thank you. Yes, Bert.
Well, if we're following up that she was, comes from a significant political position herself, then why would she want to jeopardize his political allies?
Right, exactly. And also that she was very beautiful and he actually was enticed by her beauty, whether he was in love with her beauty, I don't know. But whatever love or lust means.
So I don't think that's in his interest to have done that.
It also would not be of his interest. So it's not clear.
Right.
Do you have something to add, Bernie?
Well, but it, on the other hand,
Okay.
because she's from an important family, he's a threat to him. And so he's just consolidating his power.
So he's showing maybe even more power, Ronita's suggesting, by saying, I only needed her to marry her. Now I've got everything. I don't need her anymore. Right. So that's another way of looking at it. So maybe that was in his interest. Anybody else have a thought about that?
Maybe she came with considerable assets and she took them with her. I don't know. And maybe he had a crazy, now he could have a beautiful young wife. Maybe, maybe, although he probably could have all these young women anyway, but maybe he wanted, he had a beauty contest. Maybe he had a a midlife crisis, and he wants a trophy wife.
Right. Well, they were all trophy wives, honestly. I mean,
Yeah.
but that's yet another trophy wife. Beautiful. Okay. Okay. So we have different opinions here. One opinion is that it was not to his advantage. I mean, I just imagine that if it was to his advantage, why wouldn't he have thought of it himself? That's my only question. Like, why did he need an advisor to tell him? That's all. If he was waiting for an opportunity to kind of get rid of her. But that doesn't take away from that. Yes,
He
Lance.
seemed to rely on advisors a lot.
Right. We'd seem to rely on advisors. That is true. Afterwards, Mordechai and Esther. Yes, Lance.
Okay, I want to thank Bert for directing me to the moment in which Mordechai does not bow down to Haman.
Wait a minute. Is that
Wait,
relevant to what we're saying? Because we have 10 minutes and I want to finish Perek Aleph.
But I'm following up on something that happened before. Can I do that?
I mean, you can, but can you hold the thought to when we get to that pasuk, or you want to say it now, Dafka?
I want to say it now because it will help you. And
Okay.
that is the king and Haman have the same emotion. In what I'm thinking about is this is the metonymy. In other words, the anger represents something else. It's not an emotion. It's a rhetorical device that means there's a relationship between the king and Haman. The relationship is irrationality. And Mordechai and Esther are rational. And that's the big difference here, because you're dealing with two poles. You're dealing with Persians and Jews. And from my research, the Jews are not Jews, they're Greeks. They're a front for Greeks, just like Shylock is a front for Puritans, and the Jew of Malta is a front for Catholics. So this is, in my view, a satirical attack, and the emotions, which Bert helped me track down, and I really appreciated Bert, in my view, are very fascinating because there are no other instances of their getting angry at all. I mean, there's just these two instances, and it's totally irrational. Vashti doesn't show up. Okay, it's not a major problem. Mordechai doesn't bow down. Okay, not really a major problem. And yet, to a Greek, these would be major problems for characters who are supposed to be in charge. Okay.
Maybe not just to a Greek, but thank you. That's very helpful. Thank you. I appreciate that. Okay, so picking up on Ki Rabahi, so here's a way to understand it. And when the king's decree which he will make shall be published throughout the kingdom, Ki Rabahi, meaning alluding to Vashti, that she was very great. Alluding to that, she is of great, it's actually, just one second. If you Ahasuerus published throughout your kingdom, that you banished her because she didn't listen to you, even though she is theoretically greater than you because she brought so many riches, then all wives will show respect to their husbands, regardless of whether they're greater or smaller. And remember what we said, according to one interpretation, that Haman comes from a lowly background and his wife did not respect him. So if you highlight that Vashti came from such a great pedigree and brought so much wealth and brought so much power, and yet I was able to overrule that and banish her, whatever banishing means, that could be another explanation, Ki Rabahi, because it's just not clear what Ki Rabahi, because it is great, adds to the description of his kingdom. What does it add? Unless somebody has a thought. Okay, let's go to 21. This idea was pleasing in the eyes of the king. Vehasarim and the ministers. Now Memuchan is written with his regular way because he's not jumping anymore. He's right in front of the king. And he did exactly as Memuchan suggested. Vayishlach Sefarim, and he sent letters, El Kol Medinot HaMelech, El Medina Medina Kichtava, each one of them according to their language, or written language, Vel Am Va'am, and to each nation Kitshano as its language. So why does that go along with what we said about Haman? That it's possible that Haman and his wife Zeresh came from different backgrounds, and had different languages, and she wanted to speak her language in the home, and he wanted to make sure that what the king said about, that it was sent to each province in that language, liot kol ish sorer bebeito, that every man should be dominating in his home, umedaber kilashon amo, and speak according to his background and his nationality. So
Mhm.
she came from South America and he came from wherever, from France, and she wanted to speak Spanish and he wanted to speak French. And this way he can now reassert his authority, because otherwise, why does it say that he has to speak in his language? Like, that is no connection. It's not like Vashti said, I don't want to speak your language. Why was that put in there?
Mm.
That's why and if you look at it there, that sheds light back to the Midrash, why the Midrash might have imagined that Haman needed to assert himself. Because why else midaber kishon amo, that everybody should be the authority in their own home and speak according to his nation as a pope, which is in parentheses, not his wife's, if they're different. Okay, 1 second. But there's another explanation. The Gemara in Megillah says, this letter had the official stamp of the king, that each man should rule over his home and speak in his language. And the people said to each other, wait a minute. Remember, I think Ronit said it, and maybe other people, men did rule at that time. Why would the king have to send out an edict like this? We do speak according to the language, except for Haman, according to this interpretation. So why is the king said it? So why did the king tell us to do something we already do? Mati pesh ishze. What a foolish man this person is, telling us to do something, to decree something that actually already exists. But if you look further in time, so here I'm going to finish with this idea. So, wait 1 second. No, I'm going to leave that for later. Never mind. Okay. So there's another explanation here that, remember much later on when Haman falls on Esther's bed and pleads for his life, Achashverosh comes in, gets very, very angry, especially when he heard, we don't know if he knew already, but that he was trying to kill Esther's nation. And he says, you're going to be killed. And Haman comes back and says, wait a minute, can't you ask the other ministers? And Achashverosh says, wait a minute, you're the one who changed it and said that it's enough for me to make a decision. So sorry, we're not going to wait and we're going to hang you. So that came back to bite Haman, literally.
Oh.
So that's a reading that sheds light much, much later in the story. But I'm telling it to you now to kind of close the loop on that, but we might come back to it then as well. I always feel like I spent a lot of time in Achashverosh's court when we learned this. I feel like I'm there, in Shushan, thinking about all the intrigues that are going on. I don't watch shows on TV, but I know that there are shows that talk about castle and palace intrigue. So it's possibly similar to this. I don't know. All right, my friends, it is Adar Aleph. We have another 5.5 weeks to Purim. So I believe I'll be able to, barring unforeseen circumstances, we should be able to learn. So we won't get that far, but hopefully we'll get into the third parak when Haman appears on the scene. Maybe it won't take so many classes to finish each parak, but I'm appreciating the conversation. So as long as it takes, it takes. And we will continue from my point of view until we finish the Megillah. Even if it continues, falls over into next year, that's fine with me. But I did want to get a good piece of the Megillah under our belts. So good thing for Adar Aleph. Thank you everybody for joining.
Yasher kochech.
Have a good day.
Yonina, bye.
Bye-bye.
Yeah. Right.
Bye.
All right, friends. Bye-bye. Be well.
Thank
Thank you.
Warm.
Thank